Welcome to The Secrets of Success. By following the proven techniques of the guests who appear on this series, you'll learn that even successful people run into detours and failures, and how you can apply their success techniques to change your life.
You're now listening to the most unique show on radio, the show dedicated to making you a success. Brian Penso says most people are adrift in life. Today, he'll show us how to change that. Brian, welcome to our show.
Welcome. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Brian, you begin your book entitled Who Are You and Why? The Evolution of You. You begin by saying you're living the life someone else created for us. Tell us what that means, because that's a real pounder to start a book with.
Well, I wanted to get people's attention at the get-go, because the lives that they lead now have been basically dictated for them, and it starts about 3 to 7 years old. You know, when we're coloring, you know, everything's fine. We're not inside the lines and that sort of thing. But as we get a little bit older, we start the corrections. The corrections come in. You're going outside the lines. You're not finishing a picture before we go to the next one. So our lives start getting dictated to us, and we fall into that habit of always doing what people ask for us to do. And that's why I started out with that people are actually leading a life that someone else chose for them and laid the path down, instead of living their life based upon the decisions and the things that they want to do themselves.
Now, at what point, though, are we hear people say, oh, I'm so old. How old are you? 19. And I remember once looking at someone when I was much, much younger, and they were 30, and I thought, that's an old guy, 30. At what point do we get too old to change? Can we still get out of this programming?
Oh, most definitely. You just have to understand the path and the first stepping stone to start at. And that's start to look internally. It's like, why do you think? Ask yourself, why do I think what I think? Why did I just think that about that person? Or why did I make a decision about this particular guy and I don't like what he's doing? Is that something that was ramrodded through and controls your thinking, and it's just done being on like a random type basis? Or is it something that you internally reflect on and look inside to see why you made that decision? Because a lot of people live their lives on autopilot, which is sad.
You know, that's an interesting, in fact, I jotted it down, you may have noticed. Why do I think what I think? That seems like it should be a T-shirt or a cap, and I think it would scare some people.
Oh, most definitely. Most people run on autopilot. Think about it. How many times have you gotten in your car, you drive to work, and you don't even remember the trip? You're there, and it's like the whole morning just went by, and you don't even know how you got there. It's just bang, bang, bang. It's automatic. People do the same thing day in and day out, and until they learn how to break that pattern, they're going to have the same results tomorrow, the next day, and the next day.
And I guess that's what you're referring to when you say we're adrift in life, because we're just following that pattern. We're not really thinking where we're going, etc. Am I correct?
Exactly. That's exactly it.
Now, Brian, you mentioned in your book, it's what we do with time that matters. Well, yes, I mean, I think in one sense that's obvious, but we're all not using it correctly. So I'm going to ask you, what are we doing wrong? Is there some sections that we should reanalyze or could do much better and get more value out of life?
Well, if you think about it, everybody carries these little computers on their side. It's called a cell phone or an app. It's a computer with a cell phone app. People spend hours and hours and hours on that day scrolling and reading. What if you took half of that time in a day and did research on something that you want to learn, or joined a mastermind group, or created your own mastermind group, or joined a networking group because you've got an idea of something that you want to create, but you don't know how to create it? So spend the time expanding your network, your mind, and your ability to think properly and put the phone away. I haven't had a TV in my house in 22 years. I disconnected it a long time ago when I became a life coach and figured out that there's nothing of value that's going to come out of that machine. So I got rid of it.
I have to say I'm with you, even though I'm a product of the television age, going back as people today are the product of the computer and the cell phone age. But many times now these days, I have to say to myself, you know what? I'm just getting and feeling more and more depressed and negative watching what I'm watching. So at least what I may do is turn to a comedy show or something that's going to be very light, or distracting rather than depressing, which is a sad state of affairs for all of us.
Oh, exactly. Click on Discovery or a History Channel or something. Something that's going to get you, you're going to learn from that. But the people, the powers to be learned that they could control the people with TV and advertising on radio. So I'm not one to be controlled. So I just disconnected from all of it a long time ago, realizing the damage that it was doing to my life and not letting me open up doors that I needed to open.
Well, the good news is we have no advertising here on WHPC. All we want to convey to our audience is the good ideas of our guests, like our guest today, Brian Penso, and the other guests we've had. So if anyone is listening, we're not trying to convince you to go right, left, or center, or to go to Joe's store or Josephine's store. Just listen to our guests and turn over your life and become more and more successful. We live in and again, this is from your book, a I want it now mentality. And I can tell you people I know, I've talked to them and they sit at dinner and expect that they're going to have $1 billion company the next day. And I'll say, well, what about step one, incorporating and hiring the work? Well, we'll get to that, but they want it now. Why is that so bad?
People, the reality of building a concrete structure on a building, even a business, is the most valuable part, because if you build a big company on sand, it's going to fall over. You've got to have the internal structures built, and that takes time. There are no manuals that you can go buy on how to properly build a company, because every one of them has its own little quirks that you're going to make mistakes. You're going to lose some money, and then you're going to learn from that process. Those all become valuable tools in maintaining the foundation of that company so it doesn't fall. And you're right. We live in a microwave society. I want it now, now, now. Well, a lot of people don't understand that it takes, you hear people say, oh, yeah, he was an overnight success. Well, it took me 15 years to become an overnight success. Multiple, bad business deals. People didn't pay me, delivered product, disappeared, stolen trucks. I mean, just any number of things that people are not going to see that are going to be setbacks. And yes, you do have those occasional, guy comes out with an idea, boom, he's a multimillionaire in a year. But I will tell you, you will make big money based upon your ability to handle it. How many people we know have won big money or have received large sums of money and are broke within 24 to 36 months? Because there's a management skill that comes in with making big money. And a lot of people don't make it to the top because they can't handle it at the top. That takes a lot of years, a lot of training and preparation to be able to handle that kind of stuff.
And I like it, Brian, in your book, and again, I'll mention the title, Who Are You and Why? You are very open about saying you went through years of failure, a very tough life, difficulties. We tend to think the entrepreneur, the person on the show, the TV star, everything goes perfect for them and they have the golden touch. And many of us and many of these people want us to see them that way. But you're very open about it, that you're one of, I guess, the rest of us, as we might call it. We're going to have a failure here and there. We're going to have a setback, but you've overcome them and been able to get through. Now, talking about failure, you mentioned, though, there's a difference, and you use the terms failure and proper failure. What's the difference?
Failure is just willy-nilly going out and doing stuff without any kind of preparation or research, any of that kind of stuff. That's just failure itself. Proper failure is doing your R&D, doing some research, and we're going to experiment on a small basis. So, okay, let's say I've got an idea that I think that I can get clients by doing X. Well, I do X because I've done a little bit of research on it, but I've talked to 20 people and I got one customer. Okay, I failed 19 out of 20 times. So that's kind of a proper failure. I did a little bit of research, I modified my idea, and I went after it. Okay, so that didn't work. So I'm going to back up and then I'm going to readjust a little bit and change directions. And now I hit 20 customers and I got 5. I called 20 and I got 5. So you're going to have an idea based upon research and development that you have acquired by either reading or listening or asking other business people, and then you're going to go out and pursue that. Not everything that you're going to do is going to be pure gold. That's what I mean by proper failure. You're lining yourself up for best results, but it doesn't always work that way. So you got to make little tweaks and stuff like that. When an engineer builds a bridge, he just doesn't draw it one time and hand it to the guy and say, here, go build it. They've got to tweak it. They've got to look at rock bed. They have to do this, do that. And the idea, the original idea, doesn't always pan out in the direction that they thought it was going to go, but they still ended up at the end result by making those little minor adjustments along the way. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense, and it also helps us get over, because if we have a setback, and when I say we, I mean all the rest of us out there listening to you, we think, oh, this isn't for me. I should have never tried it, stepped out of my comfort zone. And yet you're telling us it's okay. Learn from it, move on to the next level. And that's how entrepreneurs like yourself came about. And you said you had many rough years. Brian, before we learn more from you, we'd like to let our audience know that you're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan, but the important person you want to listen to today is Brian Penso. His book is Who Are You and Why? Brian, can you tell us, one, where we can get the book, and if there's a website where we can learn more?
You betcha. You can go to whoareyouandwhy.net. There's a little place in there. There's 10 snippets, a little snippet out of each chapter. There's my bio on there. And then at the bottom, there's a buy now, which will take you straight to Amazon.
And I will tell our audience, this is one of those short books, meaning about 100, 125 pages. It's right to the point. I read these books with a pencil or a marker in hand because I keep underlining, and I'm getting more of what I call dirty books, because they're dirty because I'm making them dirty. But that means they have a lot of great points in. And if you're looking for something to lead you onto success, or just to develop that tutoring business or that side hustle that you're working on, Brian has a great book to help you get things moving. Brian, you mentioned in the book that the world is set up for us to fail. Why is that? I would think the opposite, but why do you say it's set up for us to fail?
Well, if you look at your schooling industry that was modified many years ago when the government, and I'm not getting political here, the government stepped into the schooling industry. If you look at the schooling industry, it was set up for people to come in at the same time every day, sit down in the same chair. The bell rings. You sit there for X amount of time. The bell rings again. You get up. You walk to the next place. So it's setting up a system for people. That is robotic behavior. But if you look at your schooling industry, what is that setting you up for? It's setting you up to have a job, a job. Go in, listen to the man. Do not talk back. You know, all of the things that we're doing. So it doesn't teach people how to think. That's the most important thing that I want you to get out of today. You have the ability to think your way out of any problem, but you cannot solve a problem on the same level of thinking that created it. So what I'm saying by that is people are set up to be robots. Go to work, go to school, work for the man, retire. Nowhere in there does it teach people about money, how to manage money, how to grow money, how to operate a business. That's what I mean by that. They keep people focused on a single set of tracks, but you can't deviate off of those tracks. What if you make a mistake? If you're not making a mistake and you're not failing, you're not learning. You will become stagnant and never get out of your situation.
I'm glad you're saying that, because I've always wondered. We have a school system that was probably built somewhere between 1935 and 1950 in an era now 70, 80, 90 years later where we're not the agriculture community that it was probably built for. We don't allow for people who are different, have skills in science, in math, in the STEM professions. And we could probably do so much more. But this is a nice fit for us. And I think that's another one of those great points that when we start thinking about it, we say, wait a minute, yeah, I don't have to follow what everybody's saying because they may not be right. And who says they should be guiding my entire life? When you talk about negativity, you mentioned that we can change the meaning of what's causing problems for us. Can you explain that a little further and how we do that?
Well, you have to look at the negativity for what it is. Someone in your vicinity that is constantly bringing you down or constantly complaining, you've got to look at that and take it for what it's worth. You cannot allow that to enter into your space, because if you do, it starts to control you. So you've got the ability to understand where the negativity comes from, where the people that aren't really out for your best interest. You'll start to recognize these people as you progress through the book. The book is basically an algorithm that shows people how to identify this stuff and how to start curbing it back. Now, I'm not saying eliminate every friend that you've got, but you can pick and choose who you want to spend the most time with, or take away time from because they're not really bringing anything to your table. Right now, you have to get focused on who can bring value to you. But not only that, in reciprocation, who can you take value to? This is always a give and take thing. So you want to try to cut out the bad stuff, look for the good stuff, and always try to give your way too. Give your way to the top, because the more you do for other people, the more people will want to do for you, for one. But when you put out good, you get back good. When you put out bad, you're going to get bad back. So that's what I mean by it, recognizing it and cutting yourself loose from it.
What you say is so true, and I have to say in my own life, I've noticed that anytime I've stepped in those lines where I do more for someone else, more comes back to me, and it's almost like, wow, was it really this easy? I've been climbing the high mountain, and all I had to do was do a few nice things for people. In your book, you mentioned that to turn problems into opportunities, bring in other minds in the mix. How do we get those other minds? A lot of us might think, well, I have 6 friends and the people I see at work each day or at church or at meetings. How do we get some of these minds, and who are they? What are we looking for?
I push a lot of networking functions. Get out of the old adage is if you take your 5 closest friends, you add their incomes together and you divide by 5, you're going to have your income.
Very good.
If you want to make $250,000 a year, you can't take advice from people making $50,000 a year. You have to take advice from the people that are doing or have what it is that you want. So by networking, you're going to get out of your comfort zone, and then you're going to go and meet somebody. Well, maybe this guy's a business owner. So, you're sitting there, you get to know them, you build some rapport, and the next thing you know, that starts to turn into a conversation and in a relationship. And then you start throwing ideas out, and that's the whole key behind a mastermind group. You take the thinking of not just one mind, but 2 or 3 minds that are putting a contributing factor into the bowl of information, but you're getting it from different perspectives. Now that opens your mind up, so you start thinking at a different elevation, which is what you have to do. You've got to constantly work on elevating your thinking and problem-solving abilities. And you will only do that when you can learn it from people that have already done it.
And I guess we all like, and you use the term in your book, and I think it's a great term, the comfort zone. We can always sit there, and whatever that might be for us, playing sports, going fishing, or hunting. But of course, if that's what we've done, that's what's gotten us here now. We might have to get out of that zone. Is that a little painful?
It is. But do you hate being broke more than you hate reading and expanding your mind? Which one do you hate more? Most people don't like being broke. So you have to choose what it is that you want. Are you satisfied with where you're at? Are you satisfied with driving a car with 4 different tires on it, or not knowing if it's going to start when you go to work the next morning? Is that more or less painful than getting out of your comfort zone? That is a question that you have to ask yourself. Is it easy getting to the top? No. And as I did a podcast the other day, and why is there so many elevators to get to the top of a building? It's because there's no straight rides. You've got to take one elevator up so many floors, then you get off of that floor, you get on another elevator, then you go up so many floors, you get off that elevator. And that is the same as building your life and a business. You have to do it on a gradient basis.
Brian, I love the point you're making, and I want our audience to know, if they're just tuning in, They're listening to Brian Penso. He is the author of the book, Who Are You and Why? And he's talking to us today on the Voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan. And Brian, we're going to ask you again, where can we get the book? And tell us slowly the website if people want to go to it. Because, again, it's a brief book, but it's right to the point, and it can change our lives.
The webpage is whoareyouandwhy.net. And you can get a little snippet of each chapter in there. And at the bottom, there is a buy now button, and it'll take you straight to Amazon. And
we always tell our audience that we try to present this. We've been doing it for 33 years. The best authors, entrepreneurs, adventuresome people who can change lives. But they have to actually out and activate themselves and go out and do something. Are you at that point where you want to change things? Brian tells you he took years to do this. He went through failures, but today he's a success because of that. He's put it in a book. It's about less than 125 pages. You can read it in less than 2 sittings. Give yourself a chance, read it with a pencil or an underliner, and get some tips from Brian and see what you have to do. Now, one of the tips in the book, Brian, that I remember was to log our daily activities. Why do you suggest that?
People lose track of time too easily. They're wasting it on their cell phone, or they're wasting it on TV, or are they sitting in a restaurant or a Starbucks or something and just letting their time tick away. So, and I tell people about this with managing their money. Time and money are your 2 most valuable assets in your life. So as you're going, log the time, and you're going to find where you're wasting the most time. So you can take that, and now that you know that that's an issue, you can make a proper adjustment. So instead of wasting 2.5 hours on a cell phone or playing on the computer, let's cut that in half. Let's read for an hour or research for an hour and cut it back by 50%. That's what I mean. You've got to keep track of it. It's a statistic. And the only way that you can understand a statistic is if you keep accurate information on it.
I love that, but I bet you find that people are shocked when they actually do it, how they spend their time. Would I be correct?
Oh, my gosh, yes. I talk to people. I help people with managing their money. I say, well, I'm broke all the time. I say, you don't have an income problem. You've got a spending problem. So starting Monday, you're going to write down every nickel and dime, dollar, quarter, whatever it is that you spend, and you're going to do that for the next 7 days, not realizing how much money they're swiping on that credit card that comes due at the end of the month. And once they start to realize, if you got a bucket with a bunch of holes in it, if you start shoving some putty in those holes and you stop the leaks, the bucket will stay a little bit more full.
And honestly, that's such an easy thing. I happen to like to do that. I'm a list keeper and note taker. But just to get a notebook and go through your time for a day. Lawyers do this all the time. That's how they bill. If they put in 8 hours, they bill for 8 hours at their hourly rate. And we know lawyers seem to be in the higher income group in the country. So just to do that, I guess if people want to take away from today's show, just do what Brian's saying. Get hold of a little notebook and keep your daily activities for a week. See how much time you're spending watching TV, on the internet, maybe walking your dog, maybe just out jogging. If that's productive time, I guess it's great. But if not, it can be used better, and put a little putty in those holes, as you say, and let's get some things straightened out. One of the things I noticed in your book that you stress is listening. Now, that's unusual because most of us think, I can listen, I got 2 ears, everything's going in. But what do we do wrong, and what's the right way to listen?
Well, too many times people in a conversation, all they want to do is wait for the noise to stop so they can start talking to show everybody how smart they are. Communication, the most important part of it and the most valuable part of it, is the listening part. Because when you truly get engrossed into a conversation and you're listening to somebody, and I mean truly listening and comprehending what it is that they're saying, your answers will suit the conversation a whole lot better. Because it's people are notorious. I get into conversations with people and I'll tell them something and they give me an answer back that has nothing to do with the conversation. That tells me that they're not focused. I'm probably not going to do business with these people because they're not paying attention to what I am asking for. Very, very crucial. You've got top-notch salesmen. Wow, I don't know how he can be so good at sales. Well, guess what? He does a whole lot less talking and a whole lot more listening because He's dialing in to what his clients want and not trying to sell them something that they're not interested in. So the listening is the most valuable part of all communication.
And that's so true. The salesman who talks the most usually gets less business from me because it's just like they're piling on and they never stop to say, what are you looking for or what feature do you want? Brian, one of the terms we hear a lot today is networking. The groups are all over. You can pay a little, a lot, and some of them are free. But give us some tips about networking, what we should look for, and perhaps the right way to do it and some of the mistakes maybe we're making.
I see people, networking has changed over the last 3 or 4 months with all of the stuff that's going on. A lot of them are being done on Zoom. But I go to a networking group, and a lot of times I just sit down in the corner because I want to attract people to me. And it's kind of an odd thing because I got people coming out, they're handing out business cards. Here's my card. I do this. I do that. And it's like I just put the cards in 2 piles. The people that don't communicate with me and build a relationship, those cards go in 1 pile, and the other cards that have value, I put in the other. One set of cards goes home with me. The other one goes in the garbage or lays on the table. Because when you go to network, you've got to go to give, not get. This isn't speed dating. You're not out here trying to hand out 400 cards looking to get customers, because trust me, those people do not care what it is that you do. They have more interest in what you can do for them than you just trying to cram business cards down. And the only way that can be done is to actually have a conversation and build some rapport. Ask them what they do. Don't come up there flinging cards. Go ask them, hey, my name is John. What is your name? Well, I'm Bill. Well, Bill, what do you do? Oh, that's interesting. How did you get into that? You want to turn the conversation on them because it drops their guard and they're going to be more willing to communicate back than all that hard selling.
Brian, lots of good tips, but a lot more in your book. Who are you and why? Before we wrap up, please once again, give us that website.
The webpage is whoareyouandwhy.net.
Easy enough to remember. And if you're ready to step on that path to success, Brian gave you all the rules today. He told you about networking, setting up a mastermind group, and even shared with you some of his failures so you know that if he can do it, you can do it. Let's get out there and all get on that journey to success. Brian, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you very much. I want to end on one thing. Don't forget, rich people have the same amount of time in a day as poor people. How you use it makes all the difference.
I think that's a cap or a T-shirt that you should start putting out. I'd like our audience to know that you've been listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan, asking you to please join us again next week at the same time when we will continue our journey to success.